Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, let's talk about the Engineer Elite Spec, the Mechanist. Oh my, this video is going to be so much fun to talk through. I have been having the time of my life on an engineer, which is a sentence I did not think I would be saying this time around, but lo and behold, we're here. So I'll just say, like, my first impressions, I think you can already gain what I feel for the first impressions of the Mechanist. I love this Elite Spec. I would say that this is the best Elite Spec in this entire batch. The mech is a wonderful flavor, and the traits all feel super impactful to the Mechanist's build. The Mechanist, of course, we're going into Cantha with its modern technology that we're seeing, the utilization of the Dragon Jade. Everything that has been set up and that we have been told about Cantha feels like it's being infused and absorbed by the Mechanist Elite Spec, and it gives it such a wonderful identity. I feel like we're playing Cantha right now, even though we don't get to play any part of Xingje. We don't have access to the Siege Turtle, but it feels like such a piece of Cantha, and I'm super happy to feel that, at least with on this Elite Spec, more so than the others. So let's talk about the mech. It's awesome, it's cute, it's strong, and it's ready to pump out 100% uptime on Alacrity. I absolutely love how the traits change the fists of the mech as well. That's such a nice little touch. Depending on which adept tier trait you take, the fist of the mech will change from like a blade to a gun to like this bruisery blunt jade thing. It's so cool, and I love it. The mech itself is really fun to use. I love that we can command it by using F1, F2, and F3 skills, and it does a lot of damage, to the point where I would not be surprised to see it actually nerfed down a little bit here and there. So that's pretty much the mech. Let's talk about the mace. The mace, it's okay. It's kind of okay. But I actually am in favor of the barrier only being on yourself and the mech, because I feel like having this, it kind of bleeds into AoE barrier application, and it starts to almost bloat the power of this entire Elite Spec, especially bloating the raw healing and barrier support category. I feel like Mechanist should fill the niche of being a really strong boon provider with Alacrity and Fury and Might. I feel like that should really be its niche, while having a couple traits that apply AoE barrier. I think that's totally fine. But with having it on the auto attack, especially when this Elite Spec has been paired with the Spectre for this specific beta, it starts to feel like it's outshining the Spectre in a way, because you start to realize once again how insanely powerful a lot of AoE support skills are coded, and how immense the barrier output can be, where with Spectre it's a lot of single target and you're getting a lot of barrier on that, but you don't have that much AoE application unless you're focusing on a couple traits. So overall, I would say reduce that mace barrier just by a little bit, but you can then increase it on the Mechanist themselves and the actual mech to help support it. So I was playing it in raids, and I heard the fellow Mechanists start to say that the mech in a raiding scenario was dying quite frequently. So maybe if you just kept it up with the mace, that would be a little bit better, and something I would prefer to see. So now the Signets. The Signets, they still feel like they are 2010 Signets in its passive design, but this is really more just like a personal expectation that I had, but you know, it's totally fine, because it's like I set up the expectation. I had no reasoning to think that it would be anything different. I was just wondering, like, you know, it's 2021. How have Signets changed? What if, you know, how would a Signet look in modern Guild Wars 2? And apparently the answer to that question is they look very much the same, which is totally fine, because the actives are quite cool. I do like the actives on the Signet. So the only bugs that I could really point out was that I've seen some of the models of the mech get stuck on geometry of the game, and their animations tend to like lock up. Like, I noticed their arms would like start to crunch into themselves and it would shake a little bit. So it's just mostly like the rigging of it could be, you know, touched up a little bit, how it interacts with walls and barriers. I've seen some traits not working with the F skills. One of my friends pointed out that some of the tool belt skills would only, some of the tool belt traits, I should say, would only proc on the F1 of the mech, and that it wouldn't proc on the other two. So that could be something that is a little bit of an issue. And then additionally, I've noticed myself that the shadow step signet will not always teleport the mech to you, and that I think is a big bug that I would really love to make sure is ironed out, because the mech is a little bit wonky in its AI, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I think those are really all of the bugs that I've seen, and overall is a really great thing. It's not a long list of bugs, it's not a long list of issues that I've had, or anything that is essentially groundbreaking or shattering to this Elite Spec, similar to like the Spectre, where the system of targeting needs to kind of be looked at again. And I know that's not the onus of the Spectre, and it's not a specific Spectre problem, but it's just a function of the game that kind of inhibits an Elite Spec. And so far with the Mechanist, not too many things to point out in that regard. The only thing that I could think of is just the mech itself and how AI is coded. One last critique would be to work on the AI of the mech a little bit more, because it feels a little floaty, and it seems to have a really long leash. Like, you'll start running, and the mech, if you like would just mentally imagine an invisible chain to you, I feel like the mech has a super large swing circumference around you in the circle. If it was kind of sticking to you closely a little bit more, I feel like it would maybe feel a little bit better. And additionally, this would also help because you don't really have many command abilities or features to reposition the mech. It kind of just goes wherever you have a target. And even if you start moving, sometimes the mech will deselect the target and start to move with you. And especially if you're trying to use an ability that is surrounding the mech, if it starts to move, you might miss a couple allies, so it kind of becomes a situation of RNG rather than skilled setup and pay off. But the Shadow Step Signet is a really nice signet to have. I just wish that it was a little bit more reliable. So I think those are all of my messages and first impressions of the Mechanist. I've been playing it in open world PvE. I have not taken it into raids yet. I'm honestly saying that this was so much fun. I did take two of my friends, Smudgem and Ivan, on the Discord. We went in just 3-person dungeons, and it was essentially a 6-person squad because of the mechs, and it was super, super easy. And that's another thing I want to point out really quickly at the end here. I never would have thought that I would recommend an engineer elite specialization to a newer player. But if you are a newer player, or you just want something to like play that's a little bit easier, you know, that you can kind of clear content with and have a nice time in open world or in dungeons and maybe low level fractals and strike missions, the Mechanist as it stands right now is really new player friendly, and or friendly to people that want maybe a little bit easier of a time, or that might, you know, struggle with like high-end piano keyboard play. I highly recommend the Mechanist, and I think it's an awesome Elite Spec in that regard. So thank you everyone so much for coming. Like the video if you liked it. Comment down below your thoughts and first impressions with the Mechanist. Anything that I missed here, point it out in the comments. And subscribe, share if you'd like to pre-order End of Dragons. I have the links down below. Thank you so much, ArenaNet. And if you'd like to support the channel, I have a Patreon. Once again, thanks for coming, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye!